Hey everybody, welcome back to the vlog. Thank you so much for once again joining me for tea time. Today, we have a little bit of misty morning and focus combination because you know I like the zing and I also like that bergamot. It's good, it's good. In the morning, it's really good. So, I'm so glad that you're here hanging out with me, hopefully having your cup of tea or coffee this morning. Maybe some rum, depends on what part of the planet you're at. Let's see. So, we're going to get into a little bit of Nikon. The release, the announcement came out, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about it because there's been a lot of people talking about it and they're just not happy with it. And what I want to do is I want to show you some comparisons, some specs side by side between the Z6 and the Z6 II and the Z7 and the Z7 Mark II, so that you can see what has changed, what hasn't changed, and hopefully it gives you a little bit of a clue to as should you buy it or not, right? Because ROI is everything today. Return on investment, value. Does this system have value for you? Or if you're currently using one of their originals, like a Z6 or a Z7, is it worth upgrading? That is the question. So I want to say thanks to Photography Life. They put together this side-by-side, which is really great. I appreciate that, so I didn't have to go and grab the information, stick it side-by-side. So let me go ahead and switch over and share my screen for you. There we go. So here we can see that side-by-side comparison. This is the Z6 and the Z6 Mark II. We're going to go over, obviously, the Z7 also. So we're just going to bang through these as quick as possible so that we can get through it and then give you some of my thoughts, and then I want to hear your thoughts. So starting out at the top, we have a sensor resolution which is identical, and that is 24.5 megapixels. The low pass filter, yes, in both. We have sensor type, which is the BSI CMOS sensor in both. The native ISO sensitivity remains 100 to 51,200. In-body image stabilization, of course, is still the same, 5-axis, and we have the sensor size, which is identical at 35.9. Obviously, it's the exact same sensor, so it's going to be the same. 35.9 by 24 millimeters. Now, the image size, of course, will also remain the same at 6,048 by 4,024. Now, where things start changing a little bit, and I highlighted it here, we have an image processor that was the XSpeed 6. Now we have the XSpeed 6, but times 2, right? So we have 2 of them now. So you're going to have more processing power in the Nikon Z6 Mark II. Now, that is a big thing in my personal opinion because as you have more processing power, it will give you the ability and the opportunity to do more. All right, so we're going to get into that, and you'll see that in this list where you can see that things have exceeded the original version, but a lot of it has to do with that upgrade to the processor, the 2 processors, and the firmware that runs it. So let's get back into it. Now, as far as the EVF remains a 3.6 million dot EVF. The EVF coverage remains 100%. Now, there is an EVF improvement when it comes to refresh rate, which is really good, and also an improvement when it comes to blackout. That is very big, and as you know, that's one of the reasons why I like an OVF over an EVF, because I just cannot stand blackout, especially when you're, let's say, following a race car or a motorcycle or something, and you have that little bit of blackout. It drives me nuts. Well, they reduced it by a lot, as far as I understand. Let's get back over there now. So the viewfinder itself is the exact 0.8 times as far as magnification. It does not have a built-in flash. The flash sync speed is 1/200th of a second. Now, where things also change is in the storage media. Instead of just a CF Express / let's call it XQD, I'll get to that in just a second. What it also has is the support, obviously, here for an SD UHS 2 card, which is really great. Now, things also increase a little bit when it comes to continuous shooting speed. Instead of 12 frames per second, we hit 14 frames per second. And also the camera buffer went from 35 all the way up to to 124. That is a big difference, guys. Big difference. Why is that once again? Well, it can process things faster, right? So you're looking at a 12-bit lossless image instead of only being able to capture those RAWs of 35 before it just taxes out that buffer. Now we're all the way up to 124. That is a major difference, which is really good. That is very good. Now, maximum shutter speed, 1/8,000th of a second. Where things also change is the minimum shutter speed. Where it used to be 30 seconds, now it's up to 900 seconds. Now, if we do the math, 900 seconds is 15 minutes. Guys, 15 minutes. That's good if you want to take a long night shot. Let's say you're doing some astral photography or whatnot. Now, also the autofocus system remains the same with that 273 points. Low light sensitivity does get a little bit of a bump here with an extra 1 stop of low light sensitivity, which is nice. IAF in wide area AF is available now, and IAF in video is also available, so that's really good. Also now when it comes to video, we went from only 30 frames per second at 4K. We have now bumped up to 60 frames per second at 4K. Now there's a caveat to that, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Now, that video, you're going to be sacrificing a little bit if you do that 60 frames per second, because in 4K at 60 frames per second, you are going to get a 1.5 times crop. So it will be cropped in if you want to use the 60p mode in 4K. Now the HDMI out remains the same at 422 10-bit. Now you'll have HLG or HDR out, which is nice, and the articulating back panel. Even though it is now the same from the Z6, that is not a good thing, and I'll get to that in a minute also. Now, as far as the LCD back panel, it remains exactly the same at 3.2 inches by 2.1 million dots. And of course, it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity in both. And now we have an intervalometer as well as time-lapse movie, which is available so that you can do these extended time lapses, which is great. And they moved their firmware updates over to SnapBridge. So you do not have to any longer download onto a card and then do the flashing or the updating to the firmware, which is great. You go right straight through SnapBridge. You can use your phone or whatever. So that is really cool. Whenever you deal with having to do firmware updates, a lot of people are scared to do it because they don't want to brick their camera. And to make it easier and easier and easier is a good thing, not a bad thing. So like I said, SnapBridge is the way now. Moving on, we have the battery. Now the battery has changed. It is the NL-EL 15C in comparison to the 15B. You're going to get more shots out of it. Instead of 310 shots, you get 340 shots. And in video mode, instead of 85 minutes, you're getting 100 minutes of shooting. And your grip now is a major difference. So now, instead of using that MB-N10, we now have an NB-N11, guys. Now, the big thing with that is just wow, finally, we actually have a means to shoot with it in comparison to it just simply being a battery housing. It is a full, proper vertical grip. So you'll actually be able to shoot with it. You have dials. Why? Because the underbody of the camera has a connector, whereas the old one didn't. Why Nikon did that, no one understood it. It was a major problem. Just because you can put batteries into the camera, that doesn't help. Most people put batteries into the bottom of the camera, exterior batteries or external batteries. Why? Because they want an external battery grip. Why? So that they can shoot with it. So if you're doing, let's say, portraiture, and most of the time you're shooting the camera in portrait mode, you don't want to have to sit like this all day, right? You flip the camera and you have your button right over here on the battery grip. Well, that is available now through the new battery grip, which is that N11 comparison to the N10. Now, moving on. And like I said, battery grips now have controls like I just indicated, and we have continuous power. Of course, that is a possibility because it does have the connector, so you can connect a external power source to the camera. It has USB power as well as USB transfer. Weather sealing remains the same. The version of USB is still the same at Type-C version 3.1. Now the weight is slightly heavier. From 585 grams, we are now at 615 grams, and the size is almost identical. Almost identical. And finally, the price, we're looking at $2,000. So guys, that is the Z6. I want to jump right into the Z7, then just give you my thoughts on it. So we're not lamenting these specs because you know I hate doing specs, but in this situation, we really have to. So we know what we're getting here, or you know what you're getting, and then you could make an informed decision if this camera is right for you. Either right for you if you're just simply buying it brand new and you do not have a Z6 as of yet, or if you're going to want to upgrade from the Z6 over to the Z6 Mark II. So here we have the Z7 and the Z7 Mark II. Now the sensor remains identical at 45.7 megapixels. The low pass filter, there is none, of course. The exact same sensor type, which is the BSI CMOS sensor. The native ISO sensitivity remains the same, which is ISO 64 to 25,600. In-body image stabilization also remains the same with 5-axis image stabilization. The sensor size, of course, is the exact same sensor, remains the same at 35.9 by 23.9. The image size remains the same at 8,256 by 5,504. Now, where things change, once again, we have this brand new dual X-Speed 6 instead of one X-Speed 6. Now, like I said, guys, having two is going to be that major thing that differentiates the two cameras. Two is better than one. It's going to be doing double the amount of processing, and we can also throw more stuff at it. As we saw with the Z6, we're going to see the exact same thing here with the Z7. All right, jumping back into it. The exact same EVF is being used. We're looking at a 3.6 million dot EVF. Now, the coverage of that EVF, once again, is 100%, and where it is different, I think, is probably in the firmware. We have an improved refresh rate on this EVF, and we have an improved blackout. So there's less blackout now than before, just like with the Z6. That is awesome. The viewfinder magnification remains the same at 0.8 times. Built-in flash, of course, it does not have any. Flash sync remains the same at 1/200th of a second. And once again, like the Z6, the Z7 Mark II has SD UHS 2 available. Once again, you're seeing this one CFE, which is that CF Express. I'll get into that once again at the end of this video. Now, continuous shooting upped a little bit from 9 frames up to 10 frames, which is nice. And the buffer size went from 23 all the way up to 77. Once again, that is really great. That has probably something to do with not necessarily the amount of memory in it for the buffer, but the amount of speed, or the speed in which that it can process those images to offload them. The faster it can process it, the quicker it can offload those images. So that's most likely what's going on here, but I don't care how they do it. It's giving you 3 times, more than 3 times the amount of images continuous shooting, which is really nice. Also, we have maximum shutter speed, which remains the same at 1/8000th of a second. Minimum shutter speed is increased from that 30 seconds like before up to 900 seconds. That is identical, once again, to the Z6 Mark II. 900 seconds is 15 minutes. So you have a minimum shutter speed of 15 minutes. Now, autofocus system remains the same with 493 AF points, and your low light sensitivity once again is increased by 1 stop. That is really great. we always love better and better low light sensitivity. Now in the Z7 Mark II, like the Z6 Mark II, they provide that IAF in wide area AF, as well as IAF in video. So that's great. Now in maximum resolution as far as video, we still have our 4K at 30 frames per second or 30p, but now it offers 60p, which is great. That is fantastic, and I do not see a crop on that 60p, unlike what we saw with the Z6 Mark II. Now the 4K video crop remains at 1.08. I would call it almost no crop. It's very close to being no crop. Now HDMI out also remains the same at 422 10-bit. And what has also changed, just like in the Z6 Mark II, the Z7 Mark II has that HLG or HDR out. Now the articulating back panel, I hate that they call it that, it is a tilt panel which remains the same from unit to unit. And what remains the same is that resolution on that LCD panel, which it is the same, 3.2 inches by 2.1 million dots. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth remains the same. It does have that intervalometer as well as time-lapse movie. Yes, in that column, meaning that yes, you can do time-lapse now with this unit, just like the Z6 Mark II. And we have the ability to do firmware updates through SnapBridge, once again, like the Z6 Mark II. The battery has changed once again to the 15C from the 15B, which now provides 360 shots in comparison to 330 shots per charge, and the battery life for video has also expanded from 85 minutes up to 105 minutes. Now, just like the Z6 Mark II, the Z7 Mark II does get that brand new battery grip, which is a proper vertical grip. So we now have our controls once again on that grip in comparison to just simply batteries. That is fantastic. And as they say here, battery grip does now have controls, obviously. You have continuous power. Why? Once again, the bottom of the camera does have that power in and that data in, which is very important. That is fantastic. Also, it shows as USB power as well as transfer, of course, because you have that data in. And the weather sealing remains the same, and the USB version also remains the same, which is Type-C version 3.1. Once again, just like the body on the Z6 Mark II, it went up slightly from 585 grams to 615 grams, and the dimensions are almost identical, remaining, let's call it the same. But the price did lower slightly. Whereas the Z6 Mark I compared to the Z6 Mark II, the price remained the same at $1,999. Whereas with the Z7 Mark I to the Mark II, you are seeing a discount. So the original was $3,399. Now it's $2,999. So that is a reduction of, let's call it $400 starting out. That is really nice. Now, so I guess to recap, all right, to kind of put this a bunch of mess into a little tight ball, let's call it. The difference between the Z6 Mark I and the Z6 Mark II is basically we have two processors instead of one processor. We have one stop better in low light or low light sensitivity. We also now have the ability to use a SD UHS 2 card, which is cool, instead of the XQD. I like that. We have a minimum shutter speed that now expanded from 30 seconds all the way up to 15 minutes, which is really nice. Also 2 frames per second more in continuous shooting. Now we're up to 14 frames per second in comparison to 12. We have a larger buffer in the new model. We also have 60p when it comes to 4K, which we didn't have before. Now, there's a caveat, of course, with 60p, you're looking at a 1.5 crop to be able to do 4K at 60p. Kind of is what it is. Now, we finally get a true, let's call it, vertical battery grip in comparison to just simply a battery housing for external batteries. That is massive. That is really good. So if you're a professional shooter and you're doing a lot of portraiture, to be able to flip the camera into portrait mode, let's say, and be able to take the pictures from over here and play with dials and whatnot, that is massive. That is really, really important. Why they didn't do it in the first version, I don't even know. The first version I thought was more like alpha, not even beta. All right, that's just, I'm not going to get into it. Anyways, longer lasting battery life. So, of course, they have the new battery in it, and we have a better EVF, less blackout, a higher refresh rate. Now, is it the same, let's say, EVF with just different software? I don't know. It could be, because everything else remains the same, but I'm not sure one way or another. But it's a better EVF regardless, and the price remains at that $1,999. Now, the Z7 compared to the Z7 Mark II, once again, we have two processors. Dual processors are good, right? And you can see where there's been a, let's say, an addition or an expansion to what these cameras can do based on that processing power, right? So we have one stop better light sensitivity, which is nice. We also have the SD card, that UHS-2 card availability. We have a minimum shutter speed, just like the Z6, of up to 15 minutes. We have one frame more of continuous shooting. Instead of 9 FPS, we're up to 10 FPS on the Z7 Mark II. The larger buffer size, like I said, with the Z6. And we have 60p now available, which is nice. The difference that I see here is the 60p on the Z7 Mark II is that it is not cropped. That is really good. The battery grip, of course, is now a true proper battery grip with controls, thank God, and longer lasting battery life that comes along with it, and a better EVF, just like with the Z6 Mark II. The price has been reduced from, like I said, $3,399 down to $2,999, a $400 savings, which is really, really good. Now, a couple of things that stand out to me here is, number one, the rear panel. We're in 2020, and most companies today are going with a rear panel that is fully articulating, all right? This panel that they're using on the back of the Z7 and the Z6 Mark II is the same tilt panel, tilty tilt. That's it. Not a fully articulating that pulls all the way back so it points to the client, the subject, if you will. So that is a problem. They're pushing this a lot for video and the increased video capabilities, but they don't give you a fully articulating back panel on either one of these machines. I think that's problematic. To me, I don't like it. I want to see a fully articulating back panel, period. Video is big today. It's not like it was in 2018, 2016, all right? 2020, fully articulating back panel. You look at all the companies, they're doing it. Even the ones that hated it before, now they have fully articulating back panel like Canon had since day one. Let's just call it day one. They've had it forever. Anyways, the other thing that I'm kind of on the fence with is that the firmware that they're allowing you to upgrade through SnapBridge. What I was reading is that the 10-bit RAW mode that will be available, I believe, by the end of the year or into 2021, but it will be a paid update. Now, this is very similar to what Panasonic has done with their paid updates when they give you better, let's call it raw processing or raw availability. So if you want 10-bit RAW out of this camera, you're going to have to pay additional for that firmware update. Now, how much additional, I don't know. When is it going to come out? We never know. That is to my next point. The 4K 60p that I was talking to you about and saying there's a caveat is basically that full pixel readout 4K 60p is supposedly going to be available in February of 2021 via a firmware update. The problem that I have with this is that Nikon is notorious for saying they're going to do a firmware update and then not, or taking forever for it to actually truly happen. I'll give you a perfect example of this. I did a report way back in 2019. It was right around February, and I said, Nikon just said that they were announcing that they're going to be giving everyone that has XQD in these cameras, like for example, the D5, the D500, the D850, they're going to give them the functionality of using CF Express cards instead of the XQD. The problem with this is even though Nikon said they were going to provide this upgrade that will take their cameras, like I said, the D5, the D500, the D850 to CF Express, or allowing CF Express instead of having to use XQD, a year and 8 months later, it hasn't come out. And literally, I think it was like 3 or 4 days ago, Nikon came out and said, hey, we're going to be now providing you that upgrade, that firmware upgrade before the end of the year. What? It's going to be like 2 years, guys, 2 years since they said that they were going to give the Nikon shooters that CF Express card functionality or availability or support. So, that being said, when Nikon says, hey, we're going to give you full pixel readout, 60p, blah, 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 February 2021, does that mean it's going to be February 2023? I sure as hell hope not. So that's one of those concerns that I have when Nikon says something when it comes to firmware and firmware updates. Do they really happen as slated or as promised, let's call it? And just a lot of times it just simply isn't. So anyways, guys, I want to know your thoughts. To me, when I look at the Z6 to the Z6 Mark II or the Z7 to the Z7 Mark II, I see the identical camera with almost nothing that has changed. They have basically changed the firmware in it, added an extra processor, all right, and a few other slight niceties, and then built a proper vertical grip. Now, if you see it different than I do, I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you because I don't see anything major here. There's no innovation. It's basically iterative. Like I always say, iteration over innovation. It's horrible. We want innovation. I want to see something new in this, all right? I want to see something new. And Nikon really hasn't provided it. And their stock has kind of showed it. All right. If you look at Nikon stock over the last year, 2 years, 3 years, the thing is not doing well. All right. The company itself just feels like it's just slowly just been on a downturn. The downtrend of Nikon is real. It is real. And it's sad to me because I actually really like Nikon, even though I'm a Canon shooter. I believe that the Nikon D850 is probably one of the best DSLRs ever made. That's my opinion. I've used it. I think it's awesome. It's rugged. I think it's better than a lot of the Canon gear. So that's my opinion. So do I like Nikon? I do. And we do know, guys, that to get innovation, you have to have a continuous strife between companies. It is a necessity. You have to have it. You have to have that push and pull. You have to have a reason for the company to beat the other company. Competition is vital when it comes to innovation, because if there isn't competition, you get iteration, and we are the ones that end up being affected. Negatively affected by using the exact same crap year after year after year. All right, that's my opinion. I want to know what you think with the Nikon Z6 Mark II and the Nikon Z7 Mark II. Is this a camera that you're going to buy as a brand new shooter, not currently a Nikon owner, number one? Or if you're a Nikon owner and you have a Z6 or possibly a Z7, will you be upgrading to the Mark II? Or will you not? And why? So guys, lastly, I want to say we're talking about mirrorless cameras, and mirrorless cameras are notorious for getting dirty on the inside. Those sensors become nasty. Why? Because you pull off your lens and now all of the dust just screams as fast as possible into that magnetic, let's call it, sensor. All right, it just sucks it in there and you end up with a lot of dust and debris inside your camera. And that's one of the reasons why I developed these. You see this, guys? This is the Aurora Camera Care system. This is the Aurora camera sensor and cleaning kit. This one is for full frame, and this one is for APS-C. I also have one for micro 4/3. Now, why are these important? Well, in past years, or even now, other companies, they'll give you a whole bunch of these things, little swabs, and then they'll give you a little bottle of liquid. You don't know how much liquid to put on there, how much is safe, how much isn't. Did you get a good coating across all of it? Should I put an extra drop? It's a hot mess. So what I did is inside these packets, I have these. I have 5 sets of these. So you have a wet and you have a dry. You open up the wet, you go over the sensor. Very simple. Then you open the dry, and then you go over it one last time, as many times as needed to take off any type of residue, and you have a perfectly clean sensor every single time. Every single time, guys. And it literally takes a few minutes, literally a few minutes. And by giving you 5 of these, you can clean that sensor 5 times. So you don't have to do it once a year, or once every 6 months, send it away for $100. You don't need to do that. 5 sets of these basically comes to about $5 a cleaning, guys. $5. Clean your damn sensor. All right, clean your sensors. Don't go there in post-production, look at your sky and see all these damn dots and go and sit there and editor taking out the dots. Don't do it. It's stupid. You don't need to do it. Clean the sensor. It's easy and it's safe, and I make it even safer than ever by giving you these pre-moistened ones. So you know that the exact amount of cleaner is on there every single time. There's no guesswork, all right? So pick those up. You can find them over on my website, JCristina.com. Use promo code YT20 at checkout. If you're a subscriber, I'm giving you 20% off. Not only will you get 20% off these, but you're going to get 20% off anything that's in your shopping cart. Once again, YT20 at checkout. If you don't want to go to my website, go over to Amazon. You'll find them Prime also there. You can pick them up there. It's free delivery. You can do that. Also, B&H Photo and Video. Love the guys over there. They have these products. Also, they ship them worldwide just like I do and Amazon does. So if you prefer to go to B&H, you can go to B&H and pick them up also. But clean those sensors. Come on, guys. Clean the sensors. Anyways, that's it. I want to hear from you in the comment area below. If you got something from this video, please give it a thumbs up. That is so helpful. I can't even explain it to you guys. It is really, really helpful. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, why the hell not? Just subscribe to the channel. I give you a ton of information all week long, at least 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 videos per week. And hopefully it's good stuff. And if you like it and you want to be notified when I do come out with new videos, or if I go live, click this little bell icon over here. It's this little icon. Click that and you'll be notified immediately when I come out with new videos. And finally, head over to my website, JCristina.com, where you can find all the photography tools that I've invented for you and me over the years, and hopefully there's something there that you might like. And if there is, please pick it up and support me. Once again, YT20 at checkout. You'll get 20% off everything in your shopping cart. That's it, guys. I'm out of here for yet another vlog. Many blessings to you and your family. Stay safe and stay healthy.